everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk Physical Media. I am your host, John, and this is the weekly show where we talk about all things in the world of physical media and, of course, film. And this week in the world of physical media, it was crazy. I don't think I would be off base to say that this is one of the craziest weeks in the world of physical media as far as announcements go in the history of physical media, because we got so many great movies announced for 4K Blu-rays. Arrow Video announced what they're going to be releasing in November, and all of that, and it's the first day of spooky season, September 1st, so the channel itself is going to be kicking it into high gear as far as horror goes. I'm really excited about that. This is my favorite time of the year. Then it leads right into Thanksgiving and Christmas, but first day of spooky season, you know, it can't just be October. There's too many good movies to watch, so we have to make sure it's a 2-month thing. And let's just start it off with the news, and we'll go all the way back to the beginning of the week, where Disney actually announced that they're going to be releasing 2 M. Night Shyamalan movies on 4K Blu-ray on October 22nd. Those movies are The Sixth Sense and Signs, and thank God, these are 2 movies that have been needing to come to 4K Blu-ray for a very long time. We got Unbreakable years ago. There's so many other M. Night Shyamalan movies on 4K Blu-ray, but for some reason, I would say 2 of his 3 best movies hadn't come to 4K Blu-ray. The Sixth Sense, that's the movie that really put him on the map. It's known for its huge twist. Bruce Willis is great in that movie. Haley Joel Osment, you know, that put him on the map. He's still acting today, but he'll always be known for that movie and for artificial intelligence, AI. But then he did Unbreakable after that. That's got a 4K Blu-ray release. I love that movie. That's my second favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie. And then my third favorite is Signs. And actually, Signs was the first M. Night Shyamalan movie I ever saw. And that has one of the greatest jump scares in film history when that alien just walks across the street. Scared the hell out of me. You know, that, The Ring, and Exorcist 3, I think are the top 3 jump scares in film history. But I think Signs itself, it's just a very good movie. It's got Mel Gibson in it, Joaquin Phoenix, really before I guess he was pretty big at this point. I mean, that is a couple years after Gladiator, and Gladiators where people really took notice of Joaquin Phoenix, but he's great in that movie as well. And remember, swing away. But I'm really excited that we're going to be getting both The Sixth Sense and Signs on 4K Blu-ray. That was awesome. I couldn't believe we got that announced. And then a couple days later, or actually maybe even it was the same day, Warner Brothers announced the box art for The Terminator on 4K Blu-ray. Even though we don't still have an official release date yet, we do know that this is coming to 4K Blu-ray, and you can actually pre-order it on Amazon and Groove. I pre-ordered it on Groove.com. At first, when I saw this 4K Steelbook, I wasn't in love with it. I was getting real Sarah Connor Chronicle vibes. I just wasn't in love with it. And then it kind of grew on me. I talked to some people, and maybe I'm being a little too harsh on it. I just really think, you know, when we're talking about the original Terminator, you know, the colors that come to mind are, you know, black, dark blues, grays, reds. You know, I don't really think of white. And, you know, to use white as the base of this, or at least like an off-white, I don't know. It just doesn't work 100% for me. But of course, you know, it's just the box art. Warner Brothers, I really think, has been whiffing it on the U.S. box art for lately, and not loving it. And you know, this is one where I'm not in love with it, but I don't hate it. And you know, it's really just the box art. So I'm there for that disc that's inside of there. You know, I just really would have liked them to just use the original movie poster. I'm a simple guy, and I think the Terminator has one of the greatest movie posters of all time. And I think that you could have just gone that route. Seems like the easy route, low-hanging fruit, but sometimes low-hanging fruit is the best fruit. What can I say? So that's a little bit disappointing in the world of the Terminator, but still not a big deal. They also announced that North by Northwest and Blazing Saddles are going to be getting 4K Blu-ray releases with steelbooks as well. This isn't a big surprise. The United Kingdom had already had announcements for both Blazing Saddles and North by Northwest on 4K Blu-rays. Blazing Saddles had a beautiful collector's edition, so this will just be the United States releases. And, you know, the one thing about this that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, the same year that Blazing Saddles came out, Mel Brooks directed my personal favorite Mel Brooks movie, Young Frankenstein. And that movie isn't being talked about at all this year. Everyone's just really excited for Blazing Saddles. Now, I really like Blazing Saddles. It's not my favorite Mel Brooks movie. Mel Brooks is a great director. He's directed so many classics, but Young Frankenstein is by far my favorite. It's a perfect satire of the Universal Monsters movies, mainly Frankenstein. I think it works perfectly, and it's just laugh out loud hysterical. Blazing Saddles is really good as well, but you know, I just really think that Young Frankenstein deserved a collector's edition on 4K Blu-ray this year as well. Maybe they're waiting until next year so that, you know, people don't have to pick and choose and you could just get both on 4K. But you know, I was a little bit disappointed that people are kind of ignoring Young Frankenstein. That movie's an absolute classic. And then today, Arrow Video, well, today as in the day I'm recording this, they announced Arrow Video that their November 4K Blu-ray and Blu-ray announcements. I'm going to read these off to you. Some are really exciting. And this is a brand new 4K remaster approved by Sam Raimi, and it's one of Sam Raimi's lesser-known films, and it's one that I really enjoy. This and The Quick and the Dead are two Sam Raimi movies that really don't get talked about enough. This one stars Bill Paxton, Billy Bob Thornton. You know, it's a much smaller movie. I'm talking about A Simple Plan. This is a movie that came out in the 1990s, and again, this and The Quick and the Dead, those are the Sam Raimi movies people just seem to forget about. You know, I guess you could throw Darkman in there as well, but A Simple Plan, it's a much smaller movie. It's a much more contained movie. It's a very simple plot. A couple of guys find a plane that crashed that has money in it. Should they take the money? Should they not take the money? You know, the moral issues that surround that. And these guys really need the money. And it's just great performances by Bill Paxton and Billy Bob Thornton. You know, those guys, I feel like, again, don't get talked enough in the world of great actors. Bill Paxton, you know, after he passed away, I think people started to realize, you know, he did so much from the 1980s on. He even directed a movie, and that's a great movie at that. So seeing him in this movie, being one of the leads, he's great. Billy Bob Thornton is great, and it's got that great Sam Raimi direction. You know, it might not feel like a Sam Raimi movie if you're thinking of like the Evil Dead movies or even the Spider-Man trilogy of movies. No, it kind of feels like its own thing, but that thing is great. And another one that they announced was The Invasion, which is a remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Now, I have never seen this movie, actually, but I did a review here earlier on the channel with Salem Seller, who's actually my sister-in-law, and we were talking about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and she brought up The Invasion and said how good that movie is, so this is the perfect time to check it out. It's getting a 4K Blu-ray release. And then for the J-horror fans out there, you're going to be getting a release of Tommy or something like that. And this one's really exciting. Elvira, Master of Dark, is going to be getting a 4K Blu-ray release. I think Shout Factory used to have the rights to this, so this kind of changed because it is a US, Canada, and UK release, so I don't know exactly what happened. I believe it used to be a Shout Factory or Scream Factory release. This one's pretty funny, and this is only for the United Kingdom, so this isn't coming out here in the United States. But it's funny because I just reviewed this here on the channel thanks to Kevin Kruger, who sent me the Blu-ray of this, and that's At Close Range, the Christopher Walken, Sean Penn movie. That movie's fantastic. I love that movie. I said in my review, if that ever came to 4K Blu-ray, I'd buy it. And I saw this pop up, and at first I thought it was a 4K Blu-ray, and I was like, oh man, that's great. I can't wait to check this movie out on 4K Blu-ray. I finally saw it, loved it, great performances. But no, it's only a United Kingdom Blu-ray release. You know, I don't even know if that is the same scan as the MVD Rewind Blu-ray release here in the United States. It might actually end up being that. The box art is very similar. So if you guys in the United Kingdom haven't seen At Close Range, it's fantastic. Definitely check that out. And then the big one that they're talking about is, you know, the Shaw Scope Volume 3. So for anyone who's a fan of Kung Fu movies and have enjoyed the releases of this, Volume 3 is going to be coming out in November. Not the biggest martial arts film fan, so this isn't one that necessarily speaks to me. But still, great announcements from Arrow Video. I love that. Just let me know in the comment section below, what do you guys think of Arrow Video's announcements for November, and what are you guys really looking forward to? Because we're not done yet. Believe me, we're not done yet. We got a little bit more to talk about. A movie that I've talked about needing to come to 4K Blu-ray for a very long time is Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery. Of course, I want The Spy Who Shagged Me and Goldmember on 4K Blu-ray as well, but, you know, the first one is still the best one from 1997. You know, Mike Myers in this movie, he is great. He stars as Austin Powers and Dr. Evil, and we finally heard that this one is going to be coming to 4K Blu-ray. Love the box art on this. I love what they did with it. I don't know if this is going to be like an every year release where next year we'll get The Spy Who Shagged Me, and then the year after that we're going to get Goldmember. Either way, or I'm so excited. The fact that we're 10 minutes into this video almost, and we're just now talking about Austin Powers, that's something that could be a lead on any other video, but this week we were just getting spoiled with 4K Blu-ray announcements. But yeah, I cannot wait to get this one on 4K. One of the funniest movies of the 1990s, and a great spoof and satire of all the James Bond films, but mainly the Sean Connery and Roger Moore ones. And then another one that, I guess this isn't finally confirmed. I thought that Shout Factory was going to put out a press release, but I haven't seen anything on it. But they do have the box art for Hush coming to 4K Blu-ray. This is the movie directed by Mike Flanagan that used to be on Netflix, and it's not on Netflix anymore, and it never had a physical release before. Mike Flanagan does support physical media. He said he used to beg Netflix to put his stuff out on physical media. All we really got was The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Blue Manor, and that was it. Or Blair Manor. What am I saying? Blue Manor. Could have been Blue, but it's Blair. But, you know, those are the only ones we got released on Blu-ray. Would have loved them on 4K because they're on 4K on Netflix. So Netflix doesn't really support physical media, as you can see. Sometimes they'll source their stuff out to the Criterion Collection. but it's very, very rare, and it's very disappointing because there's a lot of great stuff on Netflix that deserves the physical media treatment. But we are going to be getting Hush on 4K Blu-ray, courtesy of Shout Factory. I am really excited about that. That Mike Flanagan is a great director. This is a much smaller, contained story. It actually stars his wife, Katie Siegel, who appears in all of his stuff. She's a deaf person in this movie, and it's basically someone just outside the house, like, fucking with her. Obviously, we know what he's going to end up doing, or what he wants to end up doing, but, it's a great little story that I really enjoy, and because Mike Flanagan is one of my favorite directors working today, I really enjoy Hush, so that's definitely one I'll be picking up as well. And then the last thing I want to talk about, I really feel like I must have missed something because there was just so many announcements. Oh, Imprint is going to be releasing The Never-Ending Story on 4K Blu-ray to celebrate its 40th anniversary. Imprint is a studio we don't talk too much about, but they do great releases. I actually don't own any from them, but from what I understand from people who do, they are great. And then for people who are a fan of the Christopher Lee horror movies and are a fan of him playing Dracula, Kino Lorber is going to be releasing Scars of Dracula on 4K Blu-ray. This is a movie that came out in 1970. I've actually never seen this movie, but I know there's a lot of Hammer horror fans who actually watch this channel. When I think of Hammer horror, I think of Christopher Lee and Vincent Price. And I know a lot of people, including Rico Gomez, were telling me about this, so I know they're excited about it. I'll probably pick it up just to check it out. And I heard that there was a transfer of this movie, or another transfer that actually was previously released that apparently looks fantastic. So if that's true, we're going to get spoiled with that again. And I really hope I didn't miss anything that's been announced because there was just so much this week. I mean, just getting The Sixth Sense alone and Austin Powers, that could have been enough. Talking about the box office for Terminator, it was just a great week in the world of physical media. So to all your friends out there who say that physical media is dying and that in a couple years everything's going to be streaming, show them everything that's been announced for physical media this week and how excited people are. But anyway, let's get into the Q&A portion of this week's show. Alright, now it's time for the Q&A portion of this week's show. As you notice, I've changed my clothes, so we're going to start it off with a question from Kevin Kruger, and he wrote, how would you rank the Scream Factory 4Ks in your collection? So I have a bunch of these, so we're going to go pretty fast with these, so I might not talk too much about each film unless I really get on a rant about something. So it was really actually hard to rank these from worst to best because consistently Scream Factory with their 4K Blu-ray releases has just been spot on. They very rarely miss. Sometimes they go a little bit lazy when it comes to the slipcover, which you'll see. But other than that, I don't really recall any really bad transfers from Scream Factory. Now, Shout Factory, that's a whole different thing. Same thing with Shout Select, so you won't see those on this list. But you're going to see all my Scream Factory 4K Blu-rays. And right off the top, we get Ouija. So many people agree with me that Ouija Origin of Evil, the sequel to this, directed by Mike Flanagan, is the much better Ouija film. Now, this one, it's actually not the worst film. I mean, people really hate this movie. It's alright. It's just very generic, so that's why it's forgettable. This 4K Blu-ray is pretty decent. Didn't come with a slipcover, so And these go together. Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You. First of all, just right out of the gate, not even talking about the 4K quality. These films are great, very underappreciated. This is the same director as Freaky, so if you like that movie, definitely check these movies out. They're great, and a lot of us were hoping for a trilogy of movies, which we were promised to get, but unfortunately, Happy Death Day was a pretty big box office success. A lot of people were surprised by that. Happy Death Day to You, not as much, so we didn't get that third movie, but we'll still have the first two. And next up is Child's Play. You can only get this on 4K in the United States because in the UK, Arrow Video's release did not have the 4K Blu-ray. So you can only get this here in the United States. As you can see, out of the 4 Child's Play movies I have in here, I think this is the worst as far as the 4K Blu-rays go. Now, this is a great movie in general. It's not my favorite Child's Play movie. You'll see that in a little while, but I still really enjoy the original one. And, it's kind of a Christmas movie. And this movie I just don't really love. It's actually one of my least favorite of the original 4 movies, and that's Child's Play 3. And it came out within a year of Child's Play 2, even though we aged the kid up and everything. It just doesn't feel like it's connected to Child's Play 2, unfortunately. But the 4K Blu-ray is really good. And originally, and you'll see this too, I don't have every single Halloween Scream Factory 4K Blu-ray release. I'm not somebody who has to have every single Halloween movie on 4K Blu-ray. I have them all already from a previously released Scream Factory Blu-ray collection, so I only picked up the movies I wanted on 4K Blu-ray, and I actually waited a whole year and bought this in the Shocktober sale last year. It's a good 4K Blu-ray. It's just Halloween 2. It's not one of my favorite Halloween films, but it is one I'll still watch every single year. Just like every single year, I'll watch Halloween 4. And Halloween 4 is probably, after this movie, I don't really like 5. I don't like 6. or The Curse of Michael Myers or whatever. H2O is pretty good. Resurrection is awful. And then, after that, we get the 2 Rob Zombie movies, which I don't really like. And then the following trilogy after that. So Halloween 4, I do watch every single year. It's very similar to the original Halloween movie. It just feels like it takes place in the 1980s. And this 4K Blu-ray is really good. And this is my favorite Child's Play movie. It's not even called Child's Play. Bride of Chucky, following in the footsteps of Scream, where it became much more of a comedy, much more meta. And I appreciated the movie for it. Jennifer Tilly's great in it. And then, of course, Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse. And this feels much, much more like a Tobe Hooper movie instead of, the movie Poltergeist. That's why I feel like Steven Spielberg's fingerprints are all over Poltergeist. But The Funhouse in general is a really fantastic horror movie. And it's also one I'll watch every single year because it does feel like spooky season. And then the Forgotten Werewolf movie classic, because it's always going to be in the shadows of an American werewolf in London. But this one's pretty damn good in itself. The Howling, it's just that the makeup effects are not as good as an American werewolf in London, but they are still pretty good. Clive Burton's Nightbreed. And this is a beautiful looking 4K Blu-ray. You should really check this out. And you also get to see David Cronenberg act. Next up is Cat People. Paul Schrader's Cat People. And this is the one that feels the least like a Paul Schrader movie, but it's damn well made. And the 4K Blu-ray, like that burnt orange look that you see in the opening credits, I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous. And this one just has a beautiful 4K steelbook release. I love this steelbook. Killer Clowns from Outer Space got the 4K treatment, and I couldn't be more thankful. And this is a great one from them. Child's Play 2. This is the highest ranking of the Child's Play 4K Blu-rays from Scream Factory. It's my second favorite of the Child's Play movies, but this is by far the best 4K Blu-ray, and I think it's because it was in a more controlled environment when they were filming it, but it's just got some gorgeous looking images in this, and I just think it's a much better film than the original Child's Play movie. I just think it's more entertaining, and I just think it's got a better through line. And this one got so much new lifeblood into it thanks to the 4K treatment by Scream Factory, and that's because The Blob. And this one is a great 4K Blu-ray upgrade, The Blob. I love this movie, and I really found a new love for it thanks to the Scream Factory 4K Blu-ray release. I mean, the pink, it looks so good on 4K, as I expected it to, and it's got a nice slipcover. I like it. And the true sequel to The Exorcist 3, came to us from Scream Factory. Unfortunately, we'll be getting the original sequel, The Heretic, this year on 4K Blu-ray. So if anyone needs a cure for insomnia, definitely pick that one up. I don't know if you need that on 4K though, but The Exorcist 3 absolutely deserved a 4K Blu-ray upgrade. And thankfully, we got a great 4K Blu-ray upgrade. Check this one out. George C. Scott is so good in this. My favorite horror film of all time. You'd think this would be number one, but I gotta be honest with the quality of the 4K Blu-ray as well. But still, getting my favorite horror film on 4K Blu-ray, I couldn't be more thankful for that. And it's a great 4K Blu-ray at that. And of course, I really like the artwork on this. I think they did a good job with this slipcover. And then even higher than that, to have Halloween 3, and that's because I think this 4K transfer is a huge upgrade over the previously released Blu-ray. You get that hardcover that all of these had. I love the artwork on this. It's very unique, and it's just a great Halloween film. In my heart, this is my favorite Halloween movie. I know it's sacrilege to say that, but I love this movie. I wish it wasn't called Halloween 3. I wish it was just called Season of the Witch, so I don't have to feel bad about saying it. Next up, Halloween. This already has 2 4K Blu-ray releases, and they're actually different from each other. This one has different color timing than the Lionsgate 4K Blu-ray release, and I think you could actually watch them both depending how you feel. I prefer this one though, and that's just because it's, I think, overall the better version. Of course, you get the better packaging. That Lionsgate 4K Blu-ray just feels very standard, and like there wasn't as much love put into it as the Scream Factory release was. And at number 3, and just because I think this is a beautiful 4K transfer and it's a lot of fun, spooky season is never complete without Creepshow on 4K Blu-ray. Definitely check this out. And getting number 2 is The Dead Zone. I couldn't believe how much of a jump in quality this was, and a lot of people don't really seem to care about this movie, which blows my mind. It's a great David Cronenberg movie, and it's based on a Stephen King book at that. And it's got so many great actors in this movie. You get Martin Sheen, Christopher Walken's in the lead role. It's a great, entertaining movie. If you love serial killers, check this one out as well. It's a great 4K Blu-ray is also. Definitely check it out for the 4K quality if you're an enthusiast for that. And then number 1, if we're going to be combining the quality of the 4K Blu-ray and the quality of the film, and I just checked this out in July, The Return of the Living Dead, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It is my favorite zombie film of all time. Watch this one every single year, and thankfully we got a great 4K Blu-ray out of it. They really put all their heart into the extras for this one, which I really appreciated. It is is an awesome movie. I love Return of the Living Dead, and thankfully this is also the best Scream Factory 4K Blu-ray in my opinion. It also got a brand new steelbook last month, so I should have picked that up, but you know, funds are funds, and they were a little bit tight at the moment, but still, I already have it on 4K Blu-ray. So that was a great question, Kevin. Thank you so much, buddy. I really appreciate that. And the next question is from Rogue1677. He said, what is the rarest Blu-ray in the collection? Well, actually, I don't really have that too many rare Blu-rays in my collection, believe it or not. I think that the Columbia Classics Volume 1 is still the rarest in it as far as like what I could resell it for. I also have a Canadian steelbook version of Memento, which is out of print, so that one's a little bit of money. But other than that, I don't really have too much out of print stuff. I'm not somebody who goes on eBay and will buy something for a really high price like Dogma. Like, I really want that on Blu-ray so bad. I'm hoping that the rumors of a 4K Blu-ray coming are true because I just want to have that in my collection. But unfortunately, right now, I can't afford to spend that much money on a Blu-ray, which, you know, it's not even in the highest quality. It's just because it's out of print. So unfortunately, I don't really have too many rare stuff in my collection. There's a couple things that will go over like the $100 mark, but other than that, it's not that crazy. But that's still a great question, Rogue One. I really appreciate it, buddy. Thank you so much. And the next question is from everybody's favorite uncle, Uncle V, and he said, do you have any plans to make any upgrades to your system? Any audio upgrades? So my TVs, I have absolutely no plans to make upgrades to. I have an LG C2 in my living room, and I have an LG C1, which you can see right here. I love my LG C1. This is the one that probably gets the most use as far as visuals go, but my audio is in my living room, and there are plans to upgrade the audio. I'm not going to lie. This upcoming Christmas, me and my wife, you know, we get each other like one big gift. My wife wants to go away next year. I'm not a big fan of traveling. I prefer to just travel to my living room. That's the place I love the most. That's where my TV is, and that's where I feel the safest. When I'm in a plane, I don't feel safe at all. So that's what she wants to do. So she wants to go away next year. She's going away with her family. And, you know, something for myself is that I'm going to be getting a brand new audio system. I don't know what I'm going to be getting yet. Obviously, I'll have to do my research before I make any decisions. But my plan is to next year get a brand new system for the living room. You know, I think it's time. I haven't upgraded my audio since 2019 or 2020, I believe. Not 100% sure on that, but for me, that's a very long time. Same thing with TVs. This is probably the longest I've gone without TVs. That's how tight things are with money. I haven't upgraded a TV in years, and it's been about 2 years now, and that used to be a thing that I always upgraded right away. Same thing with the audio. So, you know, it's been a little bit of time. Got to save my pennies, and hopefully I can upgrade the audio next year sometime. So that's the plan at least. But again, we'll have to see how things go. So that's a great question, Uncle V. I really appreciate that. And at some point, I will be reviewing Paprika here on the channel. I have the Blu-ray sitting right there. I could see it. I got to rewatch it before I do the review and take some notes, though. And the next question is from Sprazy110, and he asked, how much thought do you put into how you display your collection? Actually, quite a bit. And this past week, I did some adjustments because the shelves are starting to get a little bit tight. I like to turn some movies out. You know, I don't want to have them all just where you just see the side of the binder. Some of my favorite pieces I like to have actually facing out and looking towards me, like Dawn of the Dead, The Frighteners on 4K. That's one I always have facing out. I got to have a Batman movie facing out. Malcolm X is facing out. And it was getting a little bit tight, so I had to, like, pull things out and readjusted how the shelves look. And for me, you know, it makes sense in my mind. I don't know how much sense it would make to everybody else, because, like I said, like, I have certain things in collections, and then I have other things not in collections or in a certain, like, sub-genre area. So I have all my Kino Lorber 4K Blu-rays in their own area, all my Criterion Collection movies in their own area. Then I have everything kind of split up into genres where I'll have, like, dramas in alphabetical order, then I'll have horror in alphabetical order, then I'll have comedies in alphabetical order, then I'll have action, then sci-fi, all that stuff in alphabetical order. And then they're all split up by a facing out film, so that way it breaks up the collection. So that way you know where the next genre starts, because I like to have everything in genres, and then within those genres, I'll have like subgenres. Like in horror, I'll have all my John Carpenter movies, even if they're not a horror film. And it's the same thing with other directors like Stanley Kubrick and Steven Spielberg, Quentin Tarantino. They all have their own subsections. St. Martin Scorsese, which really sucks for me because Martin Scorsese has movies released all over the place, like in the Criterion Collection and Arrow Video. So it's hard to have a complete section for him because I can't pull Raging Bull out of the Criterion Collection. That's the stuff that will drive my OCD crazy. But if you came in and looked at my collection, you might think I'm insane. But it all makes sense up here. I mean, it's a wild thing up there, but it makes a lot of sense up in here. So, so it might not make a lot of sense to you, but I do care how it looks. I want you to be able to come in here and look at some of the stuff and be like, oh, wow, that's beautiful. Like the RoboCop 4K or the Dawn of the Dead 4K. That stuff I really like to show off. So that's a great question, Sprazy. Thanks, buddy. And then the next Sprazy 110 question is, do you usually immediately watch special features after the movie, or do you return at a later time? So actually, I will watch them right away. Usually my plan is I'll watch a movie and then I go right into hoping that there's a making of documentary, and that's always the place I go first. So when I recently rewatched Blade Runner, then I start the documentary, which is like 3 hours long. Same thing with The Frighteners. That's what I always hope to do. If there is none, then I watch the interviews, because I always do enjoy a good interview with people who made the movie and try and get into their mindset of the making ofs. And then I don't really watch the deleted scenes or anything like that unless I'm reviewing it here for the channel. Then I got to make sure I check out every single extra. But if it's just me all alone, all I'm going to really do is watch the movie, and then I'm going to watch the making of right after it, as long as it has it. That's a great question, Sprazy. Thanks, buddy. And the next question is from our channel director, Mr. Smelly Potato. And he wrote, what have been some of your biggest disagreements with movie critics when it came to movies? And were there any film reviewers that inspired you? So I'll answer the second question first. So the big critic that really got me into like wanting to do this, and it's because he did it on YouTube, is Chris Stuckman. That was always the guy that really stood out to me. He's not the first film critic I ever watched. I did watch, Siskel and Ebert, and those were the people that really put me onto film criticism before I started reading film criticism. So if you guys don't know, the real thing that I always wanted to do was to be a film critic. I kind of am at this point, but I also review 4K Blu-rays, but I've always said, like, the movie comes first for me. If the movie's not good, I'm not going to get the 4K Blu-ray. I don't care how good the 4K Blu-ray is. If I don't want to watch that movie again, it doesn't go in the collection. It's just how I feel. So, because I've always wanted to be a film critic at heart. That's what I love to do. I love to analyze movies. It's the thing I am most passionate about, I would say. I'm always thinking about it, even when I'm watching a movie. So, for me, I always followed Siskel and Ebert, and then obviously when YouTube came around, people started to review movies on YouTube, and I found people like the Schmoes Know, which is now Christian Holoff is The Big Picture. I still follow him. Chris Stuckman, he just made his own movie, but I remember when he was just reviewing movies, so he was a huge inspiration on me. Jeremy Johns is another one. Those are the ones that really stood out to me. I felt like they all had different styles, and I feel like you could see their inspiration kind of on me, and those were always the bigger inspirations on me. Now, what movies did I always disagree with critics on? I got two of them, and I always feel like the two genres where there's the biggest gap between critics and fans of the film. If you go on Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score and the audience score, I feel like the biggest gap will always be for horror and comedy. That's where stuff is the most subjective. People will line up on dramas and like how great of a performance it is, and I always feel like the real like snooty critics out there, they only really care about dramas. They don't really care about any sort of genre film, whether it be action or horror. That's one thing I'm so happy about now, is that people really, especially modern day critics, they care about horror. I think horror is becoming, if not the most popular genre of film. There are a lot of horror films out there, and that really warms my heart because I love horror as well. I just love all films, so I try and watch anything I possibly can, but I really do love horror. So saying all that, the first movie I disagreed with critics on is Halloween Kills. This is the follow-up to 2018's Halloween, and I just love this movie. I couldn't understand why it got so much hate when it came out. It's just Michael doing his thing. I don't know if that bothered people. It's the closest thing to Halloween 2, except I think it's actually better than Halloween 2. Just watching him go house to house and essentially just blowing people out. I mean, when he does the Big John and Little John, it'll always stand out to me. Plus, I found one of my favorite Halloween songs because of that scene. Look and listen, it's Halloween. And just some brutal kills. Now, yes, Evil dies tonight. It's a little bit ridiculous. It's a little bit over the top. I'm not a big fan of the Anthony Michael Hall character in this movie. But still, I have a blast with Halloween Kills. It's one of the Halloween movies I will watch every single year. The real disappointment is Halloween Ends, and I feel like critics were actually a little bit nicer to that. And then the other one is MacGruber. Now, I don't think people understood how funny this movie is. And again, comedy is really subjective. The things I find funny, you might not find funny. You might not like dumb stuff and might not find that funny, or people getting hurt. I'm a 12-year-old, I guess, because I do find all that stuff funny. I still find Jim Carrey and Will Ferrell to be some of the funniest people out there. And a lot of them rely on like dumb humor that, also I think is smart in a way. And I think MacGruber, a perfect satire of the 1980s and early 1990s action genre, is just perfect. First of all, it's based on just a SNL skit, basically spoofing MacGyver. And to think that that skit can end up being a good SNL movie, which always fascinates me when they take a skit from SNL and make it into a feature film. It doesn't always work. Like Wayne's World is obviously a shining example of when it does work. A Night at the Roxbury, the skits are much funnier than the film. The film itself is still pretty funny, but the skits itself are funnier. And in this case, I actually think that the movie is much better than the skits. It did get a Peacock show, but the movie is just so funny. Val Kilmer as the antagonist in this movie, shoes. It's perfect. But if you're a fan of those 1980s and early 1990s action films, you love this movie. And yes, the jokes can be just absolutely ridiculous in this movie. And they are. I mean, I'm gonna shoot. I say that all the time. And just, what do you want me to fuck? Like, I'm quoting this movie. And yeah, it's very vulgar. And yeah, I get it. It's very juvenile. But I still find MacGruber so funny. So I think those are the two movies I disagree most with critics. So the next question is from Lionel Jacobs, and this is a long one, so it goes, not sure if it's too late to get this in, but your thoughts on how the physical release of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was handled. The Blu-ray release has a theatrical cut and the special features. The 4K release has the raw cut on a Blu-ray disc with the special features, but the theatrical is only on the 4K disc. As a Blu-ray user, I got the steelbook, which usually includes the Blu-ray disc, but in this case, it only has the raw cut Blu-ray disc. If I want the theatrical cut on physical media, I have to buy the movie a second time. Do you think they should have at least made the steelbook a 3-disc set, 4K disc with the theatrical cut, Blu-ray disc with the theatrical cut and special features, plus the Blu-ray disc with the raw cut and same special features, and just change a little more for it, or charge a little more for it? They already charge a little bit more for the premium element of a steelbook. I would have been happy to pay even a few more bucks for the extra disc. It would have made the steelbook even more special if that was the only way to get the 4K theatrical Blu-ray raw cut, and kept the standard 4K slipcover release as the 2-disc set, missing the theatrical Blu-ray discs. Why do you think Disney/Sony took this out? In my opinion, it's a botched release strategy. Making Blu-ray users have to purchase the film twice to get the theatrical version and the raw cut, even if they bought the more expensive steelbook. My workaround, by the way, is to use a digital code to be able to watch the theatrical cut and then buy the Blu-ray disc around the holidays, when there is Black Friday sales and the price is greatly reduced. I'm not paying full price for a disc that should have been included in the steelbook release. So a little context to this question. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is the latest Planet of the Apes movie. A lot of that stuff is done with mocap, and the raw cut of the movie is where you can see the actors acting with the mocap suits on before they put the VFX on, where you could then see them as apes, which is a really cool concept. So what Lionel Jacobs is saying here is that when you buy the new 4K Blu-ray release, which I think just came out, now, the reason why I didn't pick that one up is because when it comes to new releases, if I had recently seen them in theaters, I usually won't pick up the 4K Blu-ray right away because the movie is still pretty fresh in my mind, and Black Friday sales, like you were pointing out, are right around the corner. And you know what? That's a good way to save a buck. If I'm not in a rush to watch the movie, other than the review here on the channel, I will wait for a sale, and that's what I'm going to be doing with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So in this scenario, the 4K version will only have the theatrical cut on the 4K disc, but it will not be on the Blu-ray disc. The raw cut is on the Blu-ray disc with the special features. Now, what this sounds like is a way to save some money, because what a lot of studios used to do, and they don't really do it much anymore, so they're banking on you having a 4K Blu-ray player when you do this. And I know a lot of people, including yourself, Shamrock Balls, they'll buy the 4K Blu-ray, and maybe in the future they'll get a 4K Blu-ray player, but they're still mainly Blu-ray users, but they'll still pay the extra money and get the 4K Blu-ray with it, on the hopes that later they'll have a 4K player, or maybe they just don't want to have it and they want to have that premium steelbook. That's what Lionel is saying. And what they should have did, and I agree with you, is they should have gave you the theatrical cut on 4K Blu-ray, and on its own disc had the raw cut of the movie on Blu-ray, and then on that third disc had the Blu-ray with the special features of the theatrical cut of the film. That would have made the most sense. I've seen plenty of other studios do that, including Scream Factory, Shout Factory, Arrow Video has done this in the past. That makes a lot of sense. That way you have the theatrical cut on both a Blu-ray and a 4K Blu-ray, and then the raw cut just kind of on its own disc, because, yes, that's a big selling point of buying this on physical media, but now if people only watch the Blu-ray, they do have to do that workaround, like you're saying, and buy the Blu-ray again for a second time, which obviously Warner Brothers doesn't care about. Really, they're banking on you having a 4K Blu-ray player. They're probably thinking if they're buying the 4K Blu-ray, they have a 4K Blu-ray player, there's no reason for us to have the theatrical cut in there. I just don't think they're putting much thought into it, in my opinion. Does that mean that they're right? No, I don't think they're right. I think they should have included this in a 3-disc set. That would have made more sense, in my opinion, and I do feel like they just didn't put any thought into it. That's the only reason. I just think they were a little bit neglectful in this case. They don't really think about the people who buy those kinds of things. It's Warner Brothers, so of course... So it's really unfortunate. It just kind of feels like they kind of cast the regular Blu-ray users to the side on this one, and they really concentrate on the 4K Blu-ray market, which is understandable, but you still should cater to both markets. If it's a physical media release, I think that's always the best. You know, I've always said it. Why would you try and neglect a certain part of your audience? It never makes any sense. Try and get the best version out there. If they have IMAX scenes, include the IMAX scenes. In this case, put the theatrical version on a Blu-ray disc, but I guess they're just really banking on this being a 4K Blu-ray release only for people who use 4K Blu-rays. It's a little bit unfortunate, it's a little bit lazy, but it's also not really a surprise. I wish they didn't do this. I wish they did what I think they should have done, given us the 3-disc set. Hopefully, maybe down the line, that's exactly what they'll do. The big thing nowadays is re-releasing these with, you know, standard editions or just in new editions in general, and I'm hoping that changes down the line, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm not too surprised by this, but it is unfortunate. I'm really sorry, Lionel. That kind of does suck, man. But thank you for sending that in. I really appreciate you asking my opinion on that matter. And now the last question of the week is from our buddy 021 OM Sick, and he wrote, as you know, I'm from the UK, and the UK has released many great movies. What would be your top 5 or 10 movies that were released from the UK? Mine would be in no particular order: Trainspotting, Nailed by Mouth, Rise of the Foot Soldier, Football Factory, Lawrence of Arabia, The Long Good Friday, Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Toy Soldiers, well, not Toy Soldiers, it's another good movie though, Dog Soldiers, and 28 Days Later. So of course I made a handy dandy list of the movies that I consider to be the top 10 British films of all time. And at number 10, I got a Guy Ritchie movie. You had 2 Guy Ritchie movies on your list. I have 2 on my list. The one that's missing is Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and I replaced it with one of his more recent films. Even though Guy Ritchie decides he wants to put out a movie each and every single year, I replaced it with The Gentleman. I thought this movie was fantastic. I think this was the last movie I actually saw before the pandemic. I love this movie. First of all, stat cast with Matthew McConaughey, Colin Farrell. You even get Hugh Grant in an unrecognizable but really fun role. It's just a fun movie. It's got that Guy Ritchie style with the great dialogue in here. And, you know, they're talking about weed throughout this movie. I thought that was a really fun aspect of the movie. Matthew McConaughey is a lot of fun. I just think the movie is a lot of fun. That's one thing when I go to Guy Ritchie for, is I want to have a good time. Sometimes he goes the more serious route, and he can do that. But when he's making movies like this, Snatch, Lock, Stock, those are the movies that I love from Guy Ritchie, even more than movies like, I don't know, Sherlock Holmes. And at number 9, you know, this movie came out the same year as Psycho. A lot more people prefer Psycho, but I also really do enjoy Peeping Tom. Peeping Tom is a great slasher movie. You know, it's kind of the movie that's one of the movies that is considered the start of the slasher genre. So I guess technically it's not a slasher movie, even though it does have a lot of the aspects. And, I mean, the thing that stands out for this movie for me is how beautiful looking this movie is. That Technicolor look to it. I mean, it's one of a kind in my opinion. It's pretty much like, yes, it came out the same year as Psycho, but Psycho black and white. This one is a very colorful movie. They have kind of similar themes, but either way, it's a great film. And at number 8, I have A Clockwork Orange, which I know you can argue Stanley Kubrick is an American director, but Stanley Kubrick didn't really make movies in America. I don't remember what the last one he actually made in America was, but he had a real problem with it, and then he only made his movies in the UK after that. And this movie takes place in the United Kingdom, and that's A Clockwork Orange. I mean, this movie is fantastic. It's very hard to watch. Some of these scenes will make you feel uncomfortable. But it's a Stanley Kubrick movie. Stanley Kubrick is one of the greatest directors for a reason. The cinematography of this movie is fantastic. That, like, futuristic look to it, he just knew how to shoot a scene, and he did it again with this movie. It's just a tough watch, and it really asks a lot of questions about being a human being, and can you change? Can you change, or are you always going to be that same person? And this movie asks that question, and I think it gives you an answer. And at number 7, even though this didn't make my list of the top 10 movies of 1994, I still really enjoy 4 Weddings and a Funeral. It's not only really funny, but it's also got a really sad moment in this movie. but it's also very rewatchable. Again, talking about Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant, this is probably around the time when he was most famous, sometime in the 1990s. That's kind of where he was like considered one of the best looking people in the world. And he does a good job in this movie, like everybody does. And number 6, you had a David Lean movie on your list. You had Lawrence of Arabia. My favorite David Lean movie has always been The Bridge on the River Kwai. I just preferred the story of that, the anti-war story, not just about what war can do to you, and how it can actually drive you mad to the point where you're almost helping out the antagonists, where you're almost helping out the bad guys. It's just such a well-made movie. It's beautiful to look at. It's got a great 4K Blu-ray. I know most people will prefer Lawrence of Arabia, and it's a great movie, but I've always enjoyed The Bridge on the River Kwai. And at number 5, another Guy Ritchie movie, Snatch. This is my favorite Guy Ritchie movie. This is one of the movies that, will really show you that Jason Statham is more than just an action star. The guy is just funny as hell as well. It's a really funny movie. It's got that quick dialogue like a lot of Guy Ritchie movies do. Very similar to The Gentleman, but it's just perfected here in Snatch. And at number 4, I got Skyfall. I had to pick one James Bond movie. I didn't know if I should go with Dr. No or Goldfinger. Like, which one do I pick? So I just went with the one that I feel like is also, even though it doesn't really end in Britain, but still it feels like a big-time British movie. And I think that if you're going to represent Britain, you got to go with the greatest agent of all time, the greatest MI6 agent, 007 James Bond. And at number 3, The Third Man. I love this movie. It's going to be getting a 4K Blu-ray release this year. Thank God. It's one of Orson Welles' most memorable movies. Even though he didn't direct the film like a lot of people seem to think he did, he just has a great role in this movie. And I love him in it. I absolutely love this movie. It's got one of the most memorable scores of all time because it's just so unique. And still to this day, it's such a unique score. It might not be one of my favorite scores, but I love the score and I also love the movie. And at number 2, and I didn't see this movie until earlier this year. It just got a 4K Blu-ray release. It's got a US 4K Blu-ray release coming from the Criterion Collection in a couple weeks. Did a review here on the channel, a long-form review with my buddy David, a.k.a. Shamrock Balls, over on the Let's Talk podcast. We talked about The Long Good Friday. And my God, this is one of the greatest gangster films of all time. I truly love this movie. I watched it twice this year. And again, another movie with a great score. It's just so beautifully made, and it really is a great representation of a great British film. And at number 1, you have it on your list, and I have to put it at number 1 on my list. Even though that 4K Blu-ray case from Criterion is awful, the movie itself is amazing, and that movie is Trainspotting, which, definitely took some inspiration from A Clockwork Orange. This one's directed by Danny Boyle, one of the great British directors, stars Ewan McGregor, and even though this is, a movie that takes place in Scotland, you gotta still say Trainspotting is one of the greatest British films of all time. I love that movie. It's entertaining as hell. Even though it's so dark, it's just got that certain tone to it where it still feels lighthearted. Requiem for a Dream and that, they can go side by side, but they go in very different directions, and I prefer to follow Trainspotting. At least that movie's rewatchable. You watch Requiem for a Dream a second or third time, and you still feel like, my God, there's no happy ending to this world. This world has no meaning. But still, Trainspotting. Great movie. And that was a great question, 0210M6. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who sent in questions for this week's episode of Let's Talk Physical Media. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video if you could. We also have channel memberships. So if you want to become a friend of the channel, or you want to even become a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggalo or Jason Martin, or even a channel director like Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews and Mr. Smelly Potato, then you guys can look for all that information in the description below. Don't forget to go over to John Doe Juggalo and Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews YouTube channels. They're great guys. Give them a subscribe, and I promise you, you will not regret it. But if you got no money to throw away, don't worry about it at all. I just hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure you guys get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.